So, welcome, Frank. Thanks for joining me. So, you are Hitachi Vantara's Chief Digital Solutions Officer. But before I start picking your brain, tell me a little bit about Hitachi Vantara. What does it do, and what's your role in the organization?
Anthony, nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Hitachi Vantara, we are a wholly owned subsidiary of Hitachi Limited. Hitachi is a large conglomerate which operates across multiple industries in energy, mobility, life, and industry. But we also have a very large IT sector. And as Hitachi Vantara, we have three lines of businesses. We help our clients from getting from what's now to what's next. Right? So that's what Hitachi Vantara does across data storage products, software products, and the solutions and services capability. Within the company, I have the responsibility to build, deliver solutions, digital solutions that our clients need. And there are two aspects to it. One is to bring together the power of what we call one Hitachi solutions. The second part of what my role entails is identifying all of the capabilities, whether it is the cloud transformation needs, data machine learning, and AI needs that our clients have, helping them go from what's now to what's next. That's just what my role is.
What's now to what's next? I like that.
Well, it is a journey. We recognize that for our clients, the digital journey is indeed a journey, and there are several things that come into play to make that successful, and we do help our clients across each of those aspects.
Well, and I think, Frank, that leads nicely to my next question. And we frequently hear of digital transformation. You had mentioned the digital journey, but I'd like to hear your take on it, your definition. How do you define digital transformation?
Well, if you go away from the jargons of digital transformation and all of the jargons that exist, right? For me, Anthony, it comes down to three things. Right? One is what impact does technology have on your business models, right? Which means how do you engage with your clients? What's the products and services that you deliver to your clients? How do you understand your clients? How do you generate revenue? Right? The business model by which you're using data, you're using all of the information that you have in your company to drive revenue for you, right? The transformation that digital enables you to drive your business model from, let's say, you are someone who's manufacturing goods and providing products to a customer. When you're able to deliver services on top of your products, your engagement with the client deepens. Your understanding of how your clients are using your products is better, right? And therefore, you're able to help your clients a lot more, which makes a complete tangible shift in your business model, right? The second aspect of digital transformation is your internal operations across manufacturing operations or HR or finance or your procurement, supply chain. Things are changing so rapidly that if your internal processes are stuck in the past, you're not going to be able to react quickly enough to your changing market needs and what your clients want, right? The third aspect of digital transformation is how do you engage with your employees, right? And the workforce is a huge part of any organization, and identifying and keeping in touch with employees, that's a huge part, right? What are the communication channels, right? How do you engage with your employees on an ongoing basis? Those are the three things that I point out to. What is your business model? How is it changing because of technology? How's your internal operations more efficient because you're able to use technology better? And how are you engaging with your own employees?
Now, speaking in the context of our built environment, our buildings, our schools, our campuses, and so on, in the context of pursuing greater energy efficiencies and proactive energy management, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and the like, how does the digital transformation you've described aid in this pursuit?
Buildings contribute to close to 40% of greenhouse gas emissions today, right? And there's different reports and research that says that up to 50% of energy that we consume in buildings is actually wasted, right? You have HVAC systems running in empty conference rooms. You have lighting on when nobody is around, right? when you're able to monitor all of the energy consumption patterns of commercial office buildings, right, and schools and other buildings, and you're able to deliver what is needed at that point in time, right? Do I really need the HVAC on in an entire floor? Do I need the lights on till 11 p.m. at night, right? Because there's one worker who is working in a cubicle in a floor, right? Those are the opportunities, and even small changes in how we operate, what kind of lighting we use, can have a significant impact on the energy consumption of these buildings. And when you look at this in the context of 40% greenhouse gas emission being contributed to by the settings in buildings, it really is a huge opportunity for us to identify and control how energy is being consumed. And today, we're also constrained by legacy infrastructure. Right? You have these buildings, some of these buildings, and the replacement cycles of equipment in buildings is large. And it becomes imperative for us to design solutions that work with existing infrastructure. How do I make sure that my energy consumption is optimized without having to replace my HVAC systems or my elevators and escalators? Because if the solution requires you to change your entire infrastructure, that's a very heavy capital investment, and very few companies can afford that. Right? The smarter solutions for building efficiency focus on retrofitting digital solutions on existing infrastructure and delivering energy efficiencies. Those are the kinds of opportunities that we are really excited about.
Well, you bring up an excellent point there because it would be a very tough sell to go to a building owner or someone who's running an entire campus and ask them to rip out everything and replace it with all new equipment. This sounds a little more realistic, Frank.
Yeah, because the investments have a cycle, some of the replacement cycles are 30 to 40 years, right? We cannot afford to wait for the replacement cycles to be over, and we cannot afford to wait either, right? And the more pragmatic solution is to be able to retrofit digital solutions into your existing infrastructure of these buildings and drive greater efficiency in energy consumption.
Now, I should mention, and perhaps I should have mentioned it right from the beginning, that before you and I got together to chat today, I attended a couple sessions at the recent Hitachi Innovation Forum. Now, one of the ones that really stick out for me is, and I'm going to read it so that I don't mess up the title,
Mhm.
Pave the Way to a Clean Energy Future with Digitalization and Transmission Investments. Now, part of that panel discussion were Hitachi Vantara's Chris Schieffer. He spoke of edge devices, digital twins, the cloud, etc. But he also advised focus on the outcome, not the technology. Don't deploy technology for technology's sake. And Frank, to me, this sounds like this statement aligns with your own mindset, as I was reading your bio, of having that data-driven approach to digital transformation. So maybe you could just explain to me what it means to have that data-driven approach to digital transformation.
Absolutely. So the way we look at transformation is, what are you trying to do, right? What is your strategy? Whether it is in business models, operations, employee engagements, all of those dimensions that we spoke about earlier, Anthony, right? What's your strategy? Who are you and what do you want to become, right? And how are you going to invest? How are you going to allocate resources to make this real, right? We typically do this through a process that we call digital value enablement, where when customers come in and say, hey, we want to put in this AI project, we want to do this IoT project, right? We say, yes, we understand that, but can we take a step back and say, what are you trying to achieve, right? And very often you realize that when you start asking those fundamental questions, there are even scenarios where people will say, hey, I want to do something in IoT because my board wants me to do it, right? Which is when we go into these discovery sessions to say, what are the goods and services that you offer to your clients today? What's your differentiation? And how do you want to change from where you're today to where you want to be, right? And then you systematically go through the process from your ambition to what your outcome has to be. This cuts across many different elements, Anthony. It cuts across uh, identifying the data that's required to take the right decisions, It includes identifying the organizational change management that is required to drive digital transformation at scale. And it also identifies value capture mechanisms. Right? You're embarking on a 4-year, 5-year transformation journey. You do not want to wait till the end of the fourth year or the fifth year to find out how you've done so far. Right? You need mechanisms by which you're capturing value in more frequent intervals. And that data should tell you, are you on path to achieve your outcomes, or do you need a change in direction, right? So at every step of the way, in formulating your strategy, in identifying what your outcome has to be, identifying the value capture along the way, data plays a huge part in making sure that the initiatives that you're undertaking will deliver the results that you're expecting.
It's interesting that, and I'm glad you mentioned this because I never would have thought of this. It's interesting that you mentioned having those mechanisms that I guess are triggered along your journey, so that you know that you're on the right path, and you're not waiting those 4 or 5 years before, fingers crossed, you start to see some value. It's part of that journey. You see things hopefully coming to fruition. I'm glad you mentioned that. I started chuckling because I'm very curious, Frank, what your answer to my next question will be, because we've already established that we want to have this data-driven approach. We want to have these goalposts along the way. Uh, Now, what lessons may have been learned by those who did not follow this sage advice?
Anywhere between 40% to 60% of digital transformation projects fail, and depending on which report you read, right? The few reasons that I have seen, one is your expectations are unrealistic, right? In terms of what are the opportunities and how do you make sure that you have the ability and the appetite to capture the opportunity, right? The second is an underestimation of the technical complexity, right? When you look at digital today, right? And if you look at, let's say, an industry 4.0 transformation that a global manufacturing plant wants, right? There are several layers to making this successful, right? Where it is, you need to understand your processes, your domain, obviously. You need data from your existing equipment and your processes, right? You need a network capability that's going to give you that connectivity that requires you to take real-time action. You need a data platform. You need the ability to understand that data, analyze it in real time, and so on, right? Very often you underestimate the complexity of the technical landscape, but also the organizational change management that is required, right? The manufacturing team does not want interference from the IT team, right? And the operations teams want to run it their way, right? So true digital transformation requires operations across multiple units within the organization to come together and deliver it. And when you do not have that, right, the organizational silos are a huge impediment to driving digital transformation. And I say this because if I have to go back to what's now versus what's next, right? These are large, successful companies. They're proud of the success that they have achieved by operating in a particular way, right? Each of the organizational unit has a set way of working. They're very proud about it, and they're very reluctant to change. A big part of successful digital transformation initiatives is change management and bringing down the silos that exist between different businesses within a company, right? Active collaboration, realistic expectations, and building a partner ecosystem, right? Because of the sheer complexity and the layers of technology that we have, the earlier you realize that you have to have the right partner ecosystem to deliver successful digital transformation, the more likely is your project going to be a success.
So I want to get into that right now. So during Hitachi's Innovation Forum, the theme of partnership came up, well, quite frequently in the sessions I attended. So you've already, touched on this, but why are partnerships so important? Why can't someone, an organization, should or should not go alone or try to go it alone on their own digital transformation journey?
I kind of look at digital transformation, it takes a village to make it successful. Let me give you an example. If if there is a massive change in, let's say, the electric grid, and there's a transformation in the way power is managed, distributed, consumed. Right? Today, we are in an environment where the place where power is generated versus where it's distributed, right, where it is consumed, there is an imbalance, right? And the constant, and we also have an environment where the grid requires a bidirectional flow, right? So the dynamics of what was expected from the grid, as an example, is changing. And for you to be able to do that, you have to solve for problems at different levels, right? You have to have the ability to consume and analyze data centrally, but you also have to have the capability to have a distributed team across each of your locations, provide you the last mile connectivity that is required to have an interface with the actual physical devices themselves, right? No organization is equipped to handle this kind of depth and breadth all by themselves, right? The complexity of the solutions being so distributed, the different layers of technology that are needed, and frankly, the expertise that is required at every level. There are companies that specialize in data. There are companies that specialize in building really deep AI algorithms. And there are companies that are driving innovation and scale at network protocol levels, right? For us to deliver digital transformation at scale, we need all of this. And it is a very prudent investment strategy to focus on what you're really, really good at and partner with somebody who's world class at their area of expertise. And the ability to bring all of that together in the context of the problem that you're trying to solve for is what is going to be differentiating, which is why, given the varied nature of technology and how it is consumed very differently, I very firmly believe that partners are going to be a very important part of successful digital transformation journeys.
Frank, thank you so much for joining me today to share your ideas and your insights when it comes to digital transformation.
My pleasure, Anthony. Thank you for having me.